appealed to the general public for donation of kidney to save her life. Now, the 25-year-old made this appeal on her social media handle on Monday, saying her rare kidney disease had compelled her to drop out of her postgraduate studies at Newcastle. Now, this is one pathetic issue that we'll be looking at, how to deal with kidney issues, how to get donors, and how difficult it has been for this young woman. Dr. Laz Eze will help us find how we can get solution to this. Public health physician, Chief Executive Officer, Talk Health Niger, right here in the studio. Thank you so much, Dr. Laz Eze, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you on the show. On a sad note, though, because this is quite a traumatic, conversation, and the fact that it's even, said to be genetic, and she can't even have respite within the family is also something quite trying. Nephrotic syndrome, which she mentioned, is a rare kidney disease. Please tell us about that first.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. My thoughts are with Sonia Ekweremadu and the entire family and all the loved ones. It's really a very big challenge having to deal with kidney disease, especially when the kidney has failed completely. Now talking about a nephrotic syndrome is a kidney disease that can affect both children and adults, and it has a lot of causes. I read the letter of Sonia, the public letter, and she mentioned focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. That's a form, one of the causes of nephrotic syndrome, and in at least 1 out of 4 cases of nephrotic syndrome is implicated. A lot of times the cause is not known. It could be infectious disease that could make that happen in the kidney. You could also have persons who are on the big side. Obesity can be a risk factor. Some drugs can also lead to that. And of course, there could be some genetic component to it. So in many of these cases, especially if there is genetic component, there's really nothing you could do about that. And from what she wrote, since 2019, when this diagnosis was first made, and it progressed to end-stage kidney disease. And for glomerular causes of end-stage kidney disease, the glomerulus is like a sieve within the kidney that filters certain substances from the blood. The harmful substances, get filtered from the glomerulus through the kidney to the ureter, to the bladder, and it goes out as urine. And some of these could be urea, could be a number of things. So when there is scarring of that glomerulus, there are thousands of it within the kidney. When there is scarring, then it could cause kidney damage. And when this progresses, then it could now lead to end-stage kidney disease. So, and when it begins, of course, the kidney is a very important organ in the body. It controls blood pressure. It also filters, certain substances the body doesn't need. And it also helps, does a lot of work within the system. And blood production, kidney also plays a role with that, with erythropoietin, which is a hormone that helps with that. So when the kidney functions fail completely, all these things it does in the body, every second of the day the kidney is working, it stops. And it makes accumulation of toxic substances within the bloodstream. And those are things that make one weak. It also, could lead to high blood pressure, because the moderation of the blood pressure it helps to do, the normal kidneys would have failed. It leads to the filtration of some substances that should also be within the system. You could have proteins that are being filtered, out of the kidney, and because of that, the protein level within the bloodstream could also reduce and also affect the homeostasis, that's the fluid balance in the system. And these are things that lead to the body swellings and all of that. So the retention of some substances within the blood, like urea, can also cause uremia, excessive urea in the system. And that also causes its own problems, which can even reflect on the skin. So the blood production that is affected also leads to anemia, so you have the person having to transfuse blood from time to time, because blood production has been significantly affected. So the red blood cells that are being produced will no longer be happening. So you need regular transfusion of blood. Even the white blood cells, where it plays a part, that helps to fight diseases and all of that. It makes the person's immune system to also be lower. So these are things that happen when one has end-stage kidney disease. Of course, nephrotic syndrome, like I said, could happen with children, adults, and most of the times you may not really pick the particular thing that is causing it. If one kidney is still functioning, you wouldn't know that such problem exists. So, but it's when both kidneys have failed that you begin to see symptoms of kidney disease.
Doctor, now listening to you, I just want to feel how traumatizing this must have been for this young woman going through all of this, particularly when you have so many complications surrounding this particular kind of kidney failure. So, does she have any hope of survival, really? Because we're looking at getting a donor for her now. And from what she has said in that her message, that under the laws of England and Wales, organ donation must be purely driven by compassion, and therefore no reward is involved.
Exactly. Yes, there is hope. The good thing about like some other organs that are very much more difficult to manage, kidney, you have paired organs. So there are two of them, and they perform the same function. One might ask, okay, why do you have two? Of course, God knows why he made it two, so that perhaps we could be able to give one to someone who needs it. So kidney transplant or renal transplant is the main solution. But before that happens, there is dialysis. Dialysis is a temporary measure where you have artificial kidney. It's not like a biological organ, but a device that performs the function the kidney does, and that is what she has been on this while. I've worked a bit in a dialysis center, and I can tell you that it's not one of the best experiences. Of course, in advanced place like England, you have more options. Hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, and all of that. But whichever option it is very inconveniencing. So, but the kidney works every second of the day. But dialysis, at best, you do 2 or 3 times a week. So it's not something that works at every time. And now you just, do 2 or 3 times a week. It will never be the same. So, but it's good she's been on that. And of course, you plan for transplant. And for transplant to happen, you have to get a donor. And that donor, most of the times you prefer family, within the family. But in this case where, the cause, is focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, is being suspected as the most likely cause of the nephrotic syndrome that led to the end-stage kidney disease. It may not be the most viable option because there is a risk, that it could still, a higher risk, that it could still happen to the transplanted kidney if it's within the family. So that's why you would want perhaps someone outside the family to make that donation. And of course, there are several investigations are done, experts are involved. And UK laws, like also in Nigerian laws, it's just that here we are not usually very strict in implementing our laws. The National Health Act 2014, from section 48, 49, 50, up to 53, made copious provisions on organ transplants. We use transplants, not harvesting. When you use the language harvesting, that is a criminal act. That means something is going wrong. But transplant is voluntary. There is no compulsion. There is no incentive, whether financial or otherwise. It means one is doing it out of altruistic, measure to help. Just like we do, to save life, just as we do blood donation. A lot of times people go and donate blood. They don't even know who is going to be the beneficiary. You know, so in the UK, they are very strict about it. And for those who need organs, they are on a queue. So because of the British health system, the National Health Service, they operate, you know, so the system is so organized that, okay, one has organ failure. It will be on dialysis. Persons could be on dialysis for years. I know someone who was on dialysis for 7 years in the UK before she eventually got a donor. So you want to donate, you also go and donate. That donation is within the pool. So the system will conduct tests and know the next person in line. If the theme matches, they will give to that person. So you don't know who is going to take the organ you're donating. The beneficiary also doesn't know who donated it, you know. So it's a kind of system that makes it in such a way that you don't have this direct contact that might lead to, oh, I did this for you, you know, what are you going to give me back?
Let's look at the dynamics of this, because you talked about, you know, a human being having 2 kidneys but can function on one. I don't think a lot of people know that. And for Sonia, she's fortunate, I will use the word, to come from a background that can afford, you know, dialysis in the United Kingdom, where there are several options. But I'm also in the understanding that at least 10% of the population worldwide is affected by chronic, you know, kidney disease.
Right.
And millions each year die because they cannot afford treatment. And starting from Nigeria, I mean, if we had a good, you know, kidney center where you can actually afford dialysis, because like you say, 2-3 times a week, that's a lot of money. And when people can barely feed and then have kidney disease, you're asking what's the chances of survival. So where do we go from here? Because it doesn't have to end with people exporting, you know, or seeking help outside the country. Why can't we get that right here in Nigeria? Because a lot of people have said, if we had that alternative here, perhaps they wouldn't have encountered, you know, the crisis they had in London. The father is incarcerated, you know, and of course that adds to psychological trauma as much as the health trauma. So why can Nigeria fix its health system?
Well, there's a lot to do about our health system. We can't stop talking about it. But I must state that kidney transplant is done in Nigeria. Even here in Abuja, you know, there are a number of centers where it could be done. Of course, not as much as the country should have in terms of the number of centers, you know. It's done in some teaching hospitals. I know UCH Ibadan, you know, FMC Omahi and some places like that, you know. So, but funding, like you noted, is key. Out-of-pocket expenditure is not sustainable. You know, over 70, I think the most recent data is about 78% of healthcare expenditure in this country is out of pocket, you know, which means most funding for health are people having to pay out of pocket. And of course, with increasing poverty level, rising inflation, you know, low spending capacities and all of that makes things work. No average Nigerian can manage kidney disease with out of pocket without seeking help. You know, no average. You have to be extremely rich to be able to afford that. And it doesn't even end with the transplant. Post-transplant care, you know, is another line of expenses on its own. And on my show on this channel, Talking with Dr. Laz, I had someone with, I think she's the head of post-transplant kidney persons in Nigeria. You know, there are over 200 of them who have had transplants and living with it. They have to buy drugs. These drugs are not produced in Nigeria. They are being imported. And you can imagine with the exchange rates rising every other day, them having to change naira to dollars and other currencies in order to buy this. So some persons get to even lose their lives after transplant because they are unable to afford. And I know a couple of them, especially that period we had the economic recession, and with the exchange rate moving from 300 and something to over 500 within a short while. I know someone who was unable to afford his drugs, really struggled, and the kidney had to fail again. And he felt so ashamed having to go and start doing fundraising again because he was an on-air personality, he had done fundraising before and all of that, you know. And before he could convince himself to go public, of course, funds started coming, but, you know, the situation had gone worse, and he died a couple of years ago. So these are real issues. The hope there is in this new National Health Insurance Authority Act, the president signed a couple of months ago that now made health insurance compulsory. Is at least we have a legislative framework that will make every Nigerian to have health insurance, expand the pool where you could have people contribute. There's also the vulnerable persons fund that is created by that law, that policy, where governments, the federal and state, could also contribute for people who are unable to afford, the poorest of the poor, persons with disabilities, aged people, and all of that. So it's my hope that we could, prioritize this. The incoming administrations at the federal and the state levels should prioritize health, because health financing is key. It's making news today because it's a high-level person that is involved. But a lot of Nigerians are going through this without anybody hearing their stories and all of that. Many get to die, and many get to sell almost everything they have and still end up. And because of inadequate knowledge, some persons, when they even do fundraising, people contribute money out of compassion. You see them buying cars and buying a number of other things without knowing that after the transplant, that's even where the spending, another level of spending begins. You get to spend over $3,000, to get drugs, according to what some of the persons living with a transplanted kidney said. So, and that's a lot of money beyond the salary of even middle-class Nigerians, beyond their annual salary. So our health system, we need much more investment. Everybody must have a health insurance. It doesn't mean that if you just have a health insurance, it can cover kidney transplants or kidney care. But it's a starting point. From there, the catastrophic health expenditure, which kidney transplants, organ failure diseases get involved, will begin to expand to get to that level where anybody who has it, wouldn't have the stress. For Sonia, she's not a UK citizen, so the expense there has been perhaps largely out of pocket.
Yeah, and she also said because of her immigration status, she also doesn't have the, is not qualified to access the national health scheme of the UK. So that's a big challenge, really. Even with her father's status, it's a big challenge. So what do you think? Is there a way the Nigerian government can actually come in to help Sonia in this at this time, considering the fact that the father in question was once a Senate president in this country?
Yes.
Deputy Senate President, I beg your pardon. Right.
Yes, the Nigerian government, every Nigerian, this thing is a human interest story. It's about, we have to be humans, So I read some things people write on the internet on this case, and sometimes you shrug and ask, where's our humanity? Of course, majority of Nigerians are compassionate. We know that a lot of persons are angry towards the leadership class and all of that, but even for your enemy, there is some things you don't wish they go through. And we have to weigh our humanity in this case. If you can't donate, I read that there's a young girl who offered to donate, and people could offer that without any expectations, because that's what donation really is. Is when you begin to have certain expectations. It's no longer donation, it's a transactional. And you could have persons who would want to go and sell their organ, which is unlawful, both within Nigeria and outside Nigeria. So I expect perhaps the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the diplomatic circles, the government of Nigeria, perhaps they are doing certain things we don't know. Perhaps they are doing that. But if they're really doing that, perhaps Sonia may probably not have to start making public appeal. I know that they've been on this since like 2019, like she mentioned, and you can imagine the struggle. And the guy who went to donate was only involved from end of last year. So a lot of persons jumped at judging them. Okay, why didn't your family member donate? Is it now that is something like this, you are looking for a poor boy? Perhaps her story may have brought out other aspects, and people shouldn't be quick to begin to blame victims. Nobody prays to be sick. Nobody knows who will be the next person. It could be anybody, whether rich or poor. The least one can do is to show compassion. Pray for such persons. Parents do anything for the life of their children. I empathize with Senator Ekweremadu and the wife. Very good people. People may have different opinions about them, but I'm close enough to know what he's doing even as a public officer and the extent of development he brought to his senatorial district and even beyond, you know. So is no parents could deserve that, you know. Parents could go to any extent to try to save the life of their kid, you know, while the other aspects of it is still being handled by law enforcement agents, but it's not a time to judge, because when you get into trouble, just pray not to get into serious trouble. It's not a time you begin to rationalize a lot of stuff. If for any reason, any offense may have been committed, it could be that, okay, maybe someone wants to donate and someone say, can you do this for me? And you say, okay, I can do it for you, which is no big deal if you can afford it. You know, without knowing that, okay, just saying I can do this for you is infringement on the law, you know. So, and persons do it, even blood donation here, you know. And in Nigeria, when someone does something for you, you can even offer without even demand. You show appreciation. So, you do, I donated blood for someone, and I know the person will say, oh, take that. I said, no. He offered it, you know, and I said, no, I'm not going to take it. It's donation, right? But there are people who may also take it and say, thank you. You know, just that act of this thing alone is a crime within the UK system.
Okay, talking about global burden of the disease. I know that chronic disease, I think for kidney, was about ranking 27th in the world. But I think by 2015, it went about 10. You've talked about blood donation. People walk in and donate blood, you know, willingly. But then nobody just walks and stands up to say, I give my kidney over. How can that also be a new conversation to be having, rather than wait till somebody is in need of it? There are different, you know, hospitals and centers that already have people who probably need but may be shy, may be embarrassed. Like you said, your friend couldn't come out publicly to appeal. So how do we look at that space? And then stage 4, before it gets too late, what is the awareness? How do you know the symptoms?
Right. Let me begin from the symptoms. I mentioned some of them at some point. Because of these functions of the kidney, one of the common symptoms when it's starting early is you wake up, your eyes are swollen. Okay. Perhaps later in the day, you know, the swelling disappears. Another day, you see the same thing, right? You know, just periorbital region and maybe the face is swollen. So when you observe that, it's a sign to go and find out what is happening. We mentioned nephrotic syndrome, but that's not the only cause of end-stage kidney disease. You know, acute or chronic glomerulonephritis, which can be caused by an infection. You know, so even there's a certain type of malaria parasite that can also affect the kidney, though not very common, but there is a certain species that can also. So within our environment, there are a lot of things. Is it
in Nigeria a lot, or that particular mosquito? Is it a lot?
Yes, not the most common one, not the Plasmodium falciparum that is most common, you know, but there is a certain strand that could also lead to that. People take all kind of substances these days, agbo, mixture of things they don't really know and all of that. You know, so, and it could harm the kidneys or the liver, you know, in some cases. So you could have generalized body swelling, especially in children, is anasaka, you know, so from head to toe everywhere is swelling. Have pita edema. The person is anemic because the blood production is being affected. You could even have heart failure coming from the hypertension, especially in older people. You know, or even in children, the anemic heart failure could happen because the blood pressure that is poorly controlled, it could be high, and when sustained high blood pressure can also affect the heart. You know, so these are a series of this. And of course, urine. Most of the times, you also see some signs within the urine. Frothy urine can happen. Frothy is too foamy. So when someone passes urine and is too foamy, you know, beyond normal, you know, you could begin to suspect there is a problem. You know, of course, for some, even you may not even be making urine for some people. So you could have anuria or reduced frequency of making urine. But when proteins are filtered through the glomerulus, you know, that's what causes excessive foaming of this thing. So these are just some of the the symptoms. And talking about, yes, if people could walk in and make donation, ideally, yes, that could be happen, but it will take us a while. There's a need for a lot of awareness. It's not something that is very convenient. As simple as blood donation might appear, we are not even yet doing well there. You know, according to National Blood Transfusion Services, we have a deficit of 1 million pints of blood that is needed in Nigeria.
But why I ask this is that some hospitals, when you go there as a patient, there are forms that you fill and they say, would you be willing to donate blood? You know, I'm just thinking that could it be something to also review? Because I walked in for my normal health routine and my doctor says to me, oh, there's a woman who's with your classification of blood, you're an A- records and we don't have a lot of that. Could you please donate to that pregnant woman? And I'm like, okay, no problem, do the normal checks. And it's in the form. So how do we look at that also as an option? Because
yes, it's a good option to begin to look at that, you know, have presence and also massive public awareness, health education on the benefits of some of these things. Even blood donation has its own benefits, apart from the psychological effect that, okay, I'm helping to save a life. There's also the aspect of you could run some tests on the blood. So it could just be through routine blood donation that the screening that will be done on the blood, that will be told that, oh, there's something we find that is not looking good. You may have to look at it, you know. So, and the good thing is you can donate blood. Like me, I donate blood and I go to work. It might not be the same for everyone, but, you know, it's something that you could do without any form of this thing. Same for organ donation. It's a bit more tricky there, but is still encouraged with sufficient awareness when people know that, okay, yes, for the kidney, you to determine that is highly voluntary, you have the experts, the urologist, the nephrologist, kidney experts, even the psychiatrist, because you have to affirm that the person is in the best mental state, you know, to make that decision that I want to donate an organ. So these are things that we need to. One of the reasons I know some persons are skeptical in terms of blood donation, because I've been involved in a lot of advocacies around it, is they feel that, oh, we donate blood and it's sold. So there is this confidence, you know, believing that, okay, I donate it free of charge, and you go to a hospital, they sell it. More awareness is required in that regard, because when they ask people pay for before a blood is given, especially in public hospitals, I can't speak for generally for private, you know, it's for screening. For every blood before you give it to someone, you have to check for HIV, you have to screen for hepatitis B virus, you have to screen for syphilis, you have to screen for malaria, parasite, a number of things, so that you are not getting an unhealthy blood to give someone and cause sickness. So the payment is for the screening, the test that is going to be conducted on that blood. The aspect I feel we need to fix is if someone donates blood, like in some hospitals as a routine, women who go for antenatal care, towards the delivery, they will ask, okay, someone should come and donate, just in case the blood is needed during childbirth. In many cases, those bloods don't get used. So the patient had paid some money for the screening. You don't use the blood. You don't refund the patient. Another patient that needs the blood, you still take money again from that patient. You know, so that practice for me is one of the things that make people feel that their blood is used for business. So there should be a mechanism in cases where the blood is not used. If the patient had paid for the screening, you know, refund the person that paid, and perhaps take it from the next persons who you are going to use the blood on.
All right, so so much awareness is still needed in that regard. But let's check out if it is possible really to avoid or to prevent kidney failure at all as a human being. Are there some kind of lifestyles that aggravate kidney failure? Are there things one needs to do to protect the kidneys while living before they start going bad?
Right, thank you very much. Yes, the kidneys like water. You know, so when you drink water often, when the urine is reddish or color looks concentrated, is a signal that you need water, because it has to be continuously flushed. The bloodstream has a lot of the metabolism of the body system, produces some substances that has to go out through the urine, and it needs water to make that to filter within the glomerulus of the kidney and go out through urine. So when one is dehydrated, it's not doing the kidney any good. So we have two types of kidney failure mainly. You have the acute and chronic. So acute is a short term, and when you fix it, it can return back to normal. But chronic is, is a continuous thing, is for a longer time. So dehydration is a major cause of acute kidney failure. So especially during the dry season, people should drink water. If you are in the office, if nothing else, regular intake of water is the most important care or practice for kidney. The worst case scenario is you urinate often, right? Which in itself is not much, because we lose water through sweat, you lose it through various means, even perspiration during hot season, through the skin and all of that, you get to lose water. So having emphasized that on water, of course, general healthy lifestyle, what we eat is important, not just for the kidney, but for, the entire body system. Doing annual checks help, because just checking the electrolyte, urea, creatinine level, or the kidney function test, as it's being called, could just help to show that, we saw we saw something that is not looking good. There's electrolyte imbalance in this system. And urinalysis that is also done, just the routine urine check. Seeing a protein is a red flag. When someone checks the urine and you see, protein is a red flag, it shows something is ongoing in the kidney. So those routine tests, if one could just once in a year, food blood count, liver function test, kidney function test, because some of these things we don't have really control over them. Like if there is a genetic component that could cause a problem, when it begins, you will not know. It will just causing damage gradually. And when it begins to show symptoms, something must have gone far, and it might not be possible to completely reverse it to normal. So, but those routine body checks and tests could help you to be picked up early, and perhaps interventions could be done. Of course, agbo and all these substances people
guava
drink,
leaves,
all sorts
moringa.
people, and it's being marketed. Interestingly, in this country, the professionals are not allowed to market in the health space, but quacks are allowed to market, interestingly.
Herbal
So
medicine.
if you go to a lot of states, the airwaves have been seized by people who claim to cure all sorts, so herbs and all of that, they are important. Even within the Federal Ministry of Health, there is the tradomedicine unit, there is alternative medicine. Yes, they are all important, but it's not everybody's job. You see some people, because they don't have a job,
yes.
they just jump into it and start marketing us. There are people who know it, and they use it, and it works. But there are people who just jump into it because of no regulation. And I think state governments need to come in here, to begin to, people shouldn't, because it's tradomedical stuff, and they just begin to go into the market, use loudspeaker, and make all sorts of claims.
On buses.
Exactly, on buses, photo parks, and all of that. And they keep dishing out false information just to sell a substance and make money of it. Many of those substances also hurt the organs.
Exactly. Talking about information and censorship, research, in the area of research. I know that the United States in 2002 tried, through a research agency to do primitive kidney, artificial kidney, using tissues, implanting in cows, and seeing that, those kind of things. I know cloning to someone who's very religious might be like playing God. But we're coming to a time where we're looking at how human tissues can actually work in repairing human tissues from the same body. How does research really, work in this space, especially for us in Nigeria?
Research is everything. Medical research is key, because every breakthrough we've had in medical sciences is from research. So even being able to harvest or to get a kidney, let me not use that word harvest, to get a kidney from a donor to another person and make it work is a function of research. This had been tried in animals, it worked and all of that, because okay, let's try it in humans. So, and we really need to invest a lot in medical research. We have the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, and I was there in June this year, and we interacted with the leadership and all of that. So they're doing a fantastic job. But the thing is, in this country, we don't really value it much. The biggest funder of medical research is the government anywhere in the world. So because public health, medical science, biomedical science generally thrives on research. So we need to do more. If you use a research that is done in a setting, because there's a lot of interaction between man and the environment influences even the biological system. The substances, our interaction with the environment also alters certain biological behaviors. So if a research is conducted in Russia, for instance, on the human body and all of that, you don't just do copy and paste. Sometimes it might work there based on certain factors that you are not in control of. So you might want to replicate a similar research here to know, is this going to work? So yes, the state governments, federal governments, we must really invest sustainably in medical research so that our decisions and our practice, in Nigeria will be largely informed by what we are seeing within the system, and we'll get better results for that.
All right,
Doctor. We just have to end it here. We thank you so much. It's been quite an expose on some of these issues as we looked at the condition of Sonia Ekweremadu, who has appealed for donors. Thankfully, we read in the papers that